Hi, I'm Josh, recording this on Sunday, May 25th to talk about a concert I went to exactly 1 week ago on Sunday, May 18th. And before I talk about the music, I guess I should address the cancerous elephant in the room, which is the fact that I was able to get in a little bit early for my skin cancer surgery. They had a cancellation on Friday, 2 days ago, so I was able to get in there and get it done, which was nice. I'll go into the update there, but I'll also divide up this video into chapters so that if you're not interested in any of this, you can skip straight to the music and the fun stuff and ignore all this stuff. But essentially what it was, it's called a Mohs surgery. So I went into the clinic in Toronto. They identified the areas of cancer that they wanted to remove. They froze it all up with local freezing, so basically needles in the face to get it all nice and numb. Then they cut out 4 areas of cancer here and then cauterized it and put some temporary bandages on it while they took the tissue that they had cut out and they sent it to the laboratory section of their building there. They spent an hour looking at everything under microscopes to make sure that they had gotten out all the cancer. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I would assume that maybe they're looking at the parts they cut out to see if it's cancer-free all around the edges, and maybe that would indicate that they got it all. But however it works, they found that one of the areas, the one basically on my ear here, they hadn't got all the cancer on the first go, so they came back, topped up the freezing, cut out some more in that area, recauterized it, band-aid back on, sent the tissue back to the lab. Another hour later, they came back and said they were pretty happy that they felt like they'd got it all. When the doctor came back, he also hit 2 other areas with liquid nitrogen that were more of a pre-cancerous state. Those weren't actually cancerous areas, but they were ones that he decided to treat just with liquid nitrogen. And at that point, they took a long time to get everything all sewed up with stitches. And my assumption is that since it's all on the face, they probably want to minimize your scarring, so they do a lot of stitching, try to get it all done up nicely. The stitching itself took a lot longer than the actual process of getting the cancer cut out, but eventually they got all that done. They put the more permanent dressings in place, and they sent me on my way about 4.5 hours since I started. So it was all done, and I headed on home, and I realized that in coming back home from Toronto, I would be going right by my very favorite restaurant in the world, a place called Wind Japanese and Thai that's in Mississauga, Ontario. And so I know that in my previous video I said that I was probably going to have to use my Patreon support money for the month to put towards bills because my expenses have been much higher than I had expected for the past month or so. However, I really thought that my face deserved to have some treats stuffed into it after everything it had gone through. So I made just a very small detour, and I used my Patreon support money to get myself a very nice sushi meal and some peanut curry chicken with coconut rice. They also have an amazing pumpkin ginger soup, but ever since I've become quite allergic to lactose, I've avoided that because I assume there's cream in that. But this restaurant just has the most amazing sushi, the most amazing Japanese and Thai food. So I picked up a really nice dinner from there. Thank you, Patreon supporters, for allowing me to treat myself after this experience. And I headed home, and at that point the procedure had been relatively easy. It really wasn't that bad. You know, the needles they're giving you in the face for the freezing are just tiny little needles, not nearly as bad as getting a tattoo, for example. And in fact, I thought that the pain afterwards would be comparable maybe to healing from a tattoo. However, I was not prepared for when the freezing wore off a couple hours later and the pain hit. And wow, it was much worse than I was anticipating. I guess I hadn't factored in the idea that with a tattoo, you're not digging far into the skin, you're not burning and cauterizing it to close it all up again. And actually, in addition to the pain, I just had this lingering smell of burnt flesh that I couldn't get out of my nose, which wasn't making me feel all that great either. But yeah, the pain has been a little worse than I was expecting. Still not nearly as bad as my abdominal surgeries, for instance. My 2 abdominal surgeries I've had for my Crohn's disease were much worse, much worse in the recovery process after the fact. So, compared to that, this isn't so bad. But yeah, not super comfortable, a little hard to sleep and all that. But anyways, the good news is they feel pretty confident that they got out all the existing cancer. They do say that on my back in particular, I have a lot of moles that I'm supposed to keep a very close eye on. The dermatologist has said to me that if I've got a partner or something to watch those for me, that would be good to watch. And I was like, well, I don't really. I've got mirrors, but it's a little hard to see back there. So I guess for now, though, as far as I know, I'm cancer-free, and I'll just have to keep an eye on things going forward. So
we've seen many children healed. We've seen midgets grow. We've seen arms and legs that stop growing because the growth cells that stop. Manda da basata. I don't make this stuff up.
That's the update with that business. Now, let's leave that behind and get on to the fun stuff now. This concert that happened last Sunday was called the Long Weekend Band Crawl or something like that. And I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. All I saw was that there were some ska-punk bands playing. Big check mark there. It was a local show just down the highway from me, so that was nice and convenient to get to, and very cheap ticket prices. And I thought, well, I got to get myself a ticket and check this out. And the night before the show, I was looking up, trying to find what times bands were coming on and that sort of thing, and I realized that the reason they called this a band crawl was because they had taken this little area, a street in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, that has a bunch of bars on the street, and they had gotten 5 of these bars and gotten them together to basically have a bunch of bands play in them. So essentially there were 18 bands playing in these 5 venues from 6:30 p.m. till 1:30 in the morning. But the one show that I was most interested in was happening in a venue called Room 47, and this is where they had a few different ska-punk bands playing. Now, the headliner of that particular venue was a band called K-Man and the 45s, which I saw quite recently and actually made a video about that show, so I'll try to remember to link that one after this video. And they are a band from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. However, they were coming on closer to midnight, and me being as old as I am, it was just a little bit past my bedtime, and the fact that I had seen them recently, I decided I wasn't going to stick around to watch them. So there were basically 2 primary bands that I was most interested in seeing. And as tends to happen to me, as the time to get out to the concert was coming up, I was going, do I want to go out to a concert, or do I want to just hang out, have a nice early bedtime, take it easy? And my kids were with me last weekend, and I was saying something along those lines to my younger son, Wyatt, and he's like, yeah, you should definitely need to go and check out your concert. So I was like, yeah, okay. And I'm so glad that my son Wyatt recommended and encouraged me to get to the show, because it was really cool. The first band that I saw there at Room 47 was a band called the Resignators, who were there all the way from Victoria, Australia. And one thing I will say is that the next band I'm going to talk about, the one that I was primarily interested in checking out, was a band called Faintest Idea, and they were all the way from England in the UK. And what was great for me as a concert attendee was it was a small venue, very small crowd of probably fewer than 100 people anyways, and so it's a nice concert environment from the concert goer's perspective. However, I just felt really bad for these bands that were coming from Quebec, another province in Canada, all the way from the UK and all the way from Australia to play for 50, 75 people, however many people were in this club. I'm like, how do they, they must be losing a ton of money to come all the way to this tiny club in this small town of Canada. I'm not sure how they make that work, but I'm so glad they did, because it was such a fun show, as ska-punk shows always tend to be. So yeah, the first band I saw was called the Resignators, like I said, from Australia, and they were fun. as tends to be the case with a lot of bands I see these days, the fellows on stage there were looking quite old. They certainly looked even older than me, and I'm almost 50, so it was fun to see middle-aged, pushing above middle-aged dudes up on stage rocking and having a great time. The venue, though, as soon as I saw that it was an upstairs venue, I knew it was going to be like an oven up there, and sure enough, it was, my God, it was hot as hell. And fortunately, I don't get this experience somehow very often, but there was one dude in the mosh pit area who just had overwhelming BO, and it was really quite something. But, you know, when you're hot and sweaty and dancing around, you can expect a bit of that, but not to the extent that this was coming off of one guy there. That being said, the Resignators rocked it, put on a great show, had a ton of fun dancing around.
That funky soul song I was walking.
And then after the show, I just had to get out of that upstairs oven and get outside where it was actually quite cold. So I'm soaking wet with sweat coming back out into the cold. So I thought, well, my car is not very far away. I'm just going to wander down to my car, grab some water, and I had stuck a leftover apple fritter in my car to perhaps eat on the way home. So I was like, okay, I'll just hydrate, refresh my energy with a nice apple fritter here. Hopefully that won't come back to bite me when I go back to the next show and start skanking it up again. But it was a nice break to chill. I did look up the other bands that were playing during the in-between time slot between the two bands that I was there to check out, and there was another venue just a block away called Prohibition or Prohibition Nightclub or something like that, where a band called Hung was playing. And when I looked them up prior to going, they seemed like a band that I might be interested in seeing, but I was a little confused because there were a few different bands called Hung when I tried to figure out who they were, and I don't think I looked up the right band, because when I got there they weren't quite what I was expecting. I was sort of expecting more of a metal type band, but these guys were probably kind of standard hard rock, and they are from Kitchener, Ontario, so they were a local band. Now, the problem with this particular venue at the Prohibition was they didn't have a stage, so the band were all on floor level, and I could basically just see the tops of their heads and try to watch what they were doing, but at least you could hear the music pretty well. I will say that Hung aren't really my style. They're not the type of band that I would just pop on the CD and listen to their stuff, but they were definitely excellent musicians and really great performers, so they were good at what they did and put on a good, fun show. I was especially impressed by their bass player. Their bass player just had some ripping lines that were really setting off the music and doing a fantastic job there. It was funny, I don't know if you saw the video I made about my trip to Toronto to catch NoFX's last show in Toronto at that festival that I went to. But when I went to that festival, I had gotten myself this white t-shirt, and I had written on the front and back of my shirt, "Write on my shirt," and I had hung some Sharpie markers off of the chain I was wearing around my neck so that people could doodle and write on my shirt however they wanted to. And when I went to these shows, actually, I saw this guy first at the Resignators show, and basically this person was dressed up like a costume ghost with a sheet over their head and eye holes cut out, but it was designed so that people could write on this white sheet whatever they wanted to. And so this particular ghost person was also at the next venue to see hung and having people write on the sheet, which I was like, hey, I wonder if they saw me at the NoFX show. Probably not. It was probably their own independent idea too, but it's always a fun thing to do, is to have people doodle on you at a concert. Then I went back to the previous venue, back to room 47, to catch Faintest Idea. This is a ska-punk band all the way from England.
Right, well, we have travelled all the way from the UK to be here, and it's been a fucking honour being in Canada for so long.
And I was not familiar with their stuff previously. It was only when I saw this concert was announced that I decided to just Google a couple of bands or check them out on YouTube anyways, and I saw that Faintest Idea was this super fun ska-punk band, and that's what prompted me to buy the ticket to the show. So I wasn't previously familiar with their stuff, but my God, they were so good.
The ball in the China shop, and every time I knock you down, but they put it right now. The ball in the China shop. I'm just a leader, so whenever I come,
Once again, it was obviously just this tiny venue, not very many people. I could sort of go back and forth between standing literally right at the stage in front of the band and taking a few steps back and dancing around, skanking it up in the mosh pit there, and then coming back out to take a break again. So it was ideal for me as a, like I said, from the person in the pit watching the show. Is such a great experience.
to the palaces.
Unfortunately, though, their set felt so short. Having all these 18 bands playing throughout the course of the evening, they seemed to each get only 45 minutes for their set. So it flew by much too quickly, although being as old as I am, I wasn't overly upset that I could finally get outside and catch my breath and get some air again, since I had once again completely exhausted myself and drenched myself in sweat in the dance/mosh pit there. And I did purchase their CD, or at least one of their albums here. This particular CD is called The Road to Sedition, and it is absolutely excellent. Their musical style is just so interesting because, yes, you have the ska-punk sound, which, you kind of expect from a band like this, but in a single song, for instance, there's a song called Not Coming Back featuring Pook that has the ska sound. If you want to stay alive, you need to let the quick draw. If you live by the pen, then you'll die by the sword. It has the punk sound. But it also has what sounds like a bit of hip-hop influence. So we'll never learn the lyrics if we never get tested. Suicide pact with a man on his deathbed. Lungs full of dust, choking and breathless. Dance on the gallows where a noose has a necklace. We're playing Russian roulette with 6 full chambers. So close to death we're on a first name basis. To flood out the airwaves, to drown out the thinking. Start a mutiny on a ship that's sinking. It has this pop sort of sound to it. We can't outrun the trouble. We need to learn to live with the pain. The only light at the end of this tunnel is the oncoming train. This time just accept it, lay your head down on the tracks. Cause this time, we ain't coming back. We ain't coming back, we ain't coming back this time. We ain't coming back, we ain't coming back this time. Close your eyes just to head into the light this time. We ain't coming back, we ain't coming back this time. Go! And then there's even some death metal vocals. And that's all in a single song on the album. I mean, there's other influences, like in the song Shell Shock, there's some obvious hardcore influences there. Scrape from the bottom of town that's forgotten and tell us all this time. It's walk with the links, we don't see them, the things that stand straight and march inside. So they're not just your standard ska punk band, I would say. They have obviously a lot of different, very varied and interesting musical influences. And not only that, not only is the music really interesting, but lyrically they are just really wonderful. They are definitely a working class punk band that is very much the kind of bedrock of the UK punk scene. These working class people talking about their societal issues and the struggles they have. For example, we have the song Nosedive that talks about the struggles of the British working class. Should I be doing more? Well, I'm holding on to principles I simply can't afford, and I'm turning out my pockets for £2.70. I'm stuck out in the pouring ranks, I can't afford the fee, and so the question's always itching. Should I be doing more? I'm sick of shouting slogans with no kick through the door, screaming neither God nor master with no sense of irony. Strike my ass back into work for the endless drudgery, and it's a no. Obviously, these themes are themes that parallel to a lot of the themes coming out of the oi punk scene, that again, very much the blue collar working class scene. There's another song called War to the Palaces that explores this stratification of society and the wealth gaps. Endless anxiety and no shelter for your head to lay. Cause home ain't where the heart is now. Home is where your debts get paid. And while the land stays under Lord's control, you know this problem won't be getting solved. So we've come to take back what was ours with bolt cutters and crowbars. War to the palaces, bring war to the palaces, bring war to the palaces. Let's storm the gates, burn the bricks. War to the palaces, bring war to the palaces. For every window there's a brick. War to And as I was doing the research to prepare to make this video, I was trying to look up some lyrics online, and I realized, wait, I've got a CD. They obviously have a liner notes in the CD here. And so I was looking at the song lyrics, and I saw the most amazing thing I've seen in CD line lyrics, or line notes, whatever you call this little booklet here. And they have all the songs listed after they have gone through all the lyrics. And for each song, they have books recommended as suggested reading that relate to the lyrics being discussed in the song, and they break down exactly why the song was written and what the song is about. So for each of these individual songs, if the lyrics are kind of catching your attention, you can go to the booklet here and maybe find books to read up more on that topic, and you can read about why they wrote what they did and what influenced them to write that. So I thought, wow, that is so dang cool that they have all of this in the CD line notes, and I just kind of stumbled on that by accident. I was super impressed with it. This is an excellent album. I highly recommend it. I am kind of bummed about the fact that they are all the way in the UK, and I don't know when they'll ever come to Canada again. So this is probably my one and only chance to actually see them live, but I'll have to definitely keep an eye on them and check out some of their other albums too, because they were just amazing all around. So yeah, that was a really, really fun show. I would love to hear from you if you've been listening to any music that's really resonated with you. Is there any bands, any songs in particular that you've been grooving to? Please do get into the comments and let me know. I love to hear about that sort of stuff, and I just really appreciate you watching. Cheers. Where they then took an hour to look at every...